he caught on the line. Charlie says next time we go fishing, we should stay very close to Dad, where he can look after us. And he hopes that when you go near the water, you'll stay close to a grown-up too.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please. We are about to demonstrate the escape procedures. In the event of a fire, smoke may obscure your vision. It is important you know the way to the emergency exits. You will find the emergency exits here, here, and here. A warning alarm will sound. Are you all right, Sarah? Well, it just occurred to me that I do this drill every day, but I don't have a planned escape route from my own home. Why don't you try and draw one for me? We should work out the best route to escape if there is a fire. Make sure that escape routes are clear and that exits are easy to open. And put in now. Right. When you're ready, we'll have a rehearsal.
Plan your escape route now. Don't leave it until it's too late.
Welcome back to ITN's Morning News. Today's top story, railway signal workers continued their industrial action today with a 24-hour strike from midday, their 8th this summer. Kelvin McKenzie, the former editor of the Sun newspaper, has resigned as managing director of the satellite television station B-Sky B. The shock move comes after a clash of personality, thought to be with Sam Chisholm, chief executive of the station. Rupert Murdoch said he counted McKenzie as a friend and wished him a very successful future. Our Home Affairs editor Jennifer Nadel has this report.
Kelvin McKenzie's own channel broke the news that he'd resigned.
News developing here at Sky Centre. Kelvin McKenzie has resigned as managing director of B-Sky B.
Right, we've worked it out now.
For 12 years, the editor of The Sun.
While up there, MP say Charles will never be king, Di will never be queen.
His official reason for going was a personality clash. Others believe he tried to take the television channel too far down market.
Kelvin McKenzie was the most brilliant editor in the 1980s in Mrs. Thatcher's Britain. His newspaper was moronic, hilarious, dirty, disgusting, but it always went for the jugular. It always seized for the jugular. Now, he hasn't been able to pull off that trick in British television.
McKenzie had made The Sun famous, some would say infamous, for headlines like Freddie Starr ate my hamster, gotcha following the sinking of the Belgrano, and this subtle message for the EC president. When called to account by MPs, he delivered a characteristic response.
You guys must be nuts.
Insiders say McKenzie's emphasis on sensationalist British stories and his obvious distaste for foreign news jeopardised the channel's overseas sales, ultimately costing him the support of his boss, Rupert Murdoch. Rumours were rife that he'd returned to Fleet Street, but Kelvin McKenzie himself was reported to have said he'd been offered nothing so far.
The self-declared Bosnian Serb parliament meets today to decide whether to accept the latest international peace plan. Amid growing pressure, the Serbian president Slobodan Milosevic said it would be tantamount to treason to reject it. The five-nation contact group, which drew up the plan to divide Bosnia in two, rejected an earlier request by Bosnian Serbs for more discussions, insisting their acceptance would be unconditional. The Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi appears to have strengthened his grip on power after telling Parliament he has no intention of resigning. After the televised address, his two main coalition partners gave him their backing. Mr. Berlusconi has come under increasing pressure in the last month, following a row with magistrates and unease over conflicts of interest with his business empire. Scott Tomlinson at ITN reports.
Silvio Berlusconi's address to Parliament was his second attempt in 4 days to end the current political crisis by distancing himself from his business interests. On Friday, he set up an American-style blind trust, but his rivals, first among them Umberto Bossi of the Northern League, continue to make great political capital out of the issue. Officially inside the ruling coalition, Signor Bossi has openly challenged the Prime Minister. He now says there's no crisis, But not satisfied with the trust arrangements, his party wants legislation.
We are preparing a law of antitrust. We don't like absolutely antitrust. And I think that the League, and not only the League, but all the political parties, ask for the absolute division between the private interest and the interest of the government.
The power of Antonio Di Pietro and his team of investigating magistrates in Milan, who've uncovered widespread high-level corruption, is now seen as excessive by Silvio Berlusconi, one of the main themes in his case before Parliament. But it's the political power of Gianfranco Fini, the leader of the neo-fascist-led National Alliance, which may be the strongest threat to the Prime Minister in the long term. For the moment, he insists the government is united. But the polls now put Signor Fini just 1 percentage point behind the once unbeatable Signor Berlusconi.
The Russian government has declared war on the smugglers of the world's most expensive delicacy, caviar. Gangsters now control up to 80% of Russian caviar exports. A £1 tin of this black gold sells for £600. As our Moscow correspondent Julian Mannion reports, it's such a lucrative business that the sturgeon which produce the eggs are being poached out of existence.
In the southern city of Astrakhan, an elite commando force responds to an alert. This is one of the SAS-style units that Boris Yeltsin has stationed all over Russia to fight organized crime. Every one of these soldiers is actually of officer rank. They're trained to deal with terrorists. But today they're trying to save the industry that produces the world's most luxurious food, caviar. The target is the gypsy section of the city. Raids on a string of people suspected of illegally poaching the fish that produces the caviar. But the evidence is there. A fridge packed with recently filled tins worth perhaps £100,000 in the West. Inside, the fish eggs, known here as black gold. Caviar is the roe of the sturgeon, an ancient fish found in the Caspian Sea. The official industry is worth well over £50 million a year, but criminal gangs are threatening to destroy it. The delta, where the Volga River meets the Caspian Sea, is where the sturgeon are killed. The fish must swim upriver to spawn, and increasingly it's the poachers that are waiting for them. Seen through the reeds, two poachers at work pulling up a fish. The sturgeon is small, a sign of dwindling stocks. Moments later, the river police spring their trap on the men they've tracked for hours. The poachers may go to prison, but as Russia crumbles, hundreds more are ready to take the risk. Troops and river police try to frustrate the poachers by finding and pulling up their lines.
The poachers put their lines at the bottom. They use sharpened hooks, and when the fish swim into them, they can't get off. I think there's something there. Yes, now you'll see a fish on the hook.
The 50-pound fish had been snagged for several hours. It would never recover from its injuries and was brought up to die. But the caviar war is much bigger than the battle against poachers. Special Forces troops fire warning shots as they intercept a lorry. Inside the truck, evidence of a sophisticated operation. The caviar is packed in authentic government tins, which are often purchased from corrupt officials.
Foreigners will only buy caviar if it is packed to international standards. They're only interested in caviar that looks like the authentic state product.
The Special Forces are making some spectacular arrests, like this seizure of a gang trying to carry caviar by train to Moscow. But the illegal trade is now as big as the legal one, helped by corruption at every level. And so far, only the little men are getting caught. On the banks of the Caspian, the ripped open bodies of sturgeon are now a common sight. And officials say that in the next 10 years, this unique fish will face a battle against extinction.
Cricket and the England squad resume preparations at Headingley for tomorrow's second test against South Africa, with Mike Atherton, hoping to put the ball-tampering row firmly behind him. Not surprisingly, the England captain remained tight-lipped on that issue at practice yesterday. Peter Staunton reports from Headingley.
The smile was back on the face of English cricket. The captain joined his squad for their first practice session before Thursday's test. After the hysteria of last week, it was back to business as usual. And for England's sake, Atherton needs to concentrate on the job of squaring the series. After suffering the distractions of the ball-tampering debate, it'll take an iron will to get his mind back on beating the South Africans.
It has been difficult to get out of everybody's mind this last week or so, but we hope it is now. I hope it's finally settled and we can get on with playing cricket. I just think he's a very good captain. I think he's a nice lad. I think he's an honest person. And because of that, we have backed him and we will continue to do so. I think he's our best captain and he's our best chance of going forward.
And on an unpredictable Yorkshire wicket, it'll take all his captain's skills to conjure up a victory.
For those joining us now, it's 5 to 6 on Wednesday, the 3rd of August. You're watching the morning news from ITN. Now a look at today's top stories. Railway signal workers continue their industrial action today with a 24-hour strike from midday, their 8th since the 15th of June. Railtrack bosses say more services will run today than during previous strikes. But the Signal Workers Union has already announced 2 more stoppages. The RMT plans a one-day strike on Friday of next week, followed by a 48-hour strike from midnight on the Sunday. An armed robber was shot dead and a policeman wounded in a raid on a jeweller's in West London. The robber blasted himself to death with his own shotgun after being wounded by a police marksman. A second raider was arrested after hijacking a police car and then losing control of it in a high-speed police chase. One man is now in custody. The injured police officer is recovering in hospital. The government has been warned to raise interest rates soon or risk inflation climbing above target over the next 2 years. The Bank of England says early action could head off the need for a greater increase in the future. But Britain's biggest mortgage lender, the Halifax, says a rate hike could damage the current recovery in the housing market. As the main contingent of British troops fly out to Rwanda today, aid officials are warning of a dysentery epidemic threatening refugee camps on its borders. They'll join an advance party of Operation Gabriel in the capital, Kigali. The strictly humanitarian mission is the largest deployment of British troops in Africa for 14 years and aims to provide the basic needs of returning refugees. And that's all from the ITN Morning News team. There'll be bulletins throughout the day on ITV. The next main news is at 12:30. Meanwhile, from all of us here, goodbye.
Lovely day to be out there.
Yeah, it's good to be back. Have I missed much?
Well, you've missed Jeff for a start.
Jeff?